Hello again.
Yeah, we're
We're
back.
well, I guess this will be the first episode. We're trying to record a couple of these at a time, so you might see us with the same outfits. We're not just wearing the same clothes over and over again. But I'm
Yeah, we'll be
Tony
doing a couple in a
Rosales.
row. And I'm Kevin
That's right.
Leatherbarrow.
That's right. We're
Yep.
this is the Undercurrent, our version of media group or media critic group. I don't know quite what it is, but before we get into the topic at hand, which it'll be the election results, because I mean we're sort of behind on this since the election
Yeah.
was almost 2 weeks ago, November 5th. The day that we're recording this is November 17th, so 15 or 12 days behind. But, that's okay. We're finally getting out. That's fine.
Yeah.
But, like I said, before we do that, we're going to chat about a news article. And maybe I'll just do the full. Can I do the full window? I can do the full window. That's what we're going to do. This today I had the opportunity to pick the article, and this is from the Electric, which is City Library Board considering management agreement compromise. So, just for some context, there's been some debate here in Great Falls about the a contract between the City of Great Falls and the Great Falls Public Library that's well, I guess we could just read it, and it probably has a good amount of this information.
Yeah, let's just go
So they
ahead. We
had
could we could stop in between. Just go ahead and read.
yeah. Yeah, so the City Commission is scheduled to vote on a new management agreement with the Great Falls Public Library Board during their November 19th meeting after months of negotiation. The Library Board will consider the agreement during its November 26th meeting. The the city and library board have had a management agreement in place since 1993. So it's been almost 30 years since they've had this management agreement. The agreement addresses management and operations of the library and includes a provision that requires the city to provide 7 mills to the library. Those mills were in addition to the 2 mills that voters had approved and were included in the city charter. In the current fiscal year, and one thing to note about these mills, this is how they end up, and I think this is true across the country. This is how they end up calculating based off of um, property valuations and whatnot, how much people are actually paying into property taxes, and then this gets converted to an actual dollar amount. In the current fiscal year, which began July 1st, the 7 mills through the agreement are projected to generate 842,000. Oh man, there's another zero there. Almost $842,000 for the library, or 27% of the library's budget, according to the library.
Hmm.
In recent years, the library board pursued a ballot measure to increase the funding support for the library. Since the 2 mills of the library funding were in the city charter, city officials opted to send a ballot amendment to the voters in June 2023 to increase that amount from 2 mills up to 17 mills rather than a standalone levy. So they originally had a 2 mil levy going to them, and now because of their election results last year, they now have a 17 mil result from that.
Do we have the amount of those mills?
Um, well, it's probably going to be something related to that. So if 7 mils give you about 842, 17 mils is probably going to give you, I don't know, probably about 1.8 or
Mm,
so
okay.
million dollars. So
Ballpark.
a pretty penny.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Uh, During public discussions throughout 2022 at the library board and city commission meetings, officials discussed the library's funding structure, and when commissioners decided to send the question to the ballot, they selected the option proposed by the library board that maintained the 7 mills in the management agreement,
Mm.
but cut the $350,000 annual subsidy from the general fund. Well, glad they cut the $350,000 annual subsidy from the general fund. After voters approved the library funding in June 2023, during a year fraught with election concerns and issues, library officials began implementing the programs and services they said the increased funds would provide. This summer, the library increased operational hours with funding through the levy to be open 7 days per week, the first time since 2014, when the library and other city departments were cut significantly to adjust for the bankruptcy settlement from the city's failed electric city power venture. Last winter, Commissioner Rick Tryon said during a city commission meeting that he wanted to consider taking back those 7 mills in the management agreement, which was set to renew in April 2024. Initially, other commissioners didn't support the move, but by February 20 meeting, commissioners agreed by consensus to discuss the management agreement with the library board. Representatives of the City and Library Board met in April, June, July, and August, resulting in an offer for a 5-year agreement that would have eliminated the 7 mills after 2 budget years and named the library director as an administrative liaison, removing the position as a city department head. Susie McIntyre, the Great Falls Public Library Director, was named Librarian of the Year, the Montana Library Associate in April. I'm not sure why this was necessary in the article. Doesn't seem too relevant.
Right. I don't
Seems
know.
like she's trying to, or the electric is trying to push a narrative or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's what it sounds like, doesn't it?
The city called it their final offer, but the library board voted 3-1 to reject the offer during a September 5th special meeting, and the city told the library team they'd reopen negotiations. So, although it was their final offer, to reopen negotiations, it sounds like they really don't know how to negotiate. Seems they need to read the Art of the Deal by Trump.
Yeah. Careful.
The negotiating teams met again in October and November and have come to a compromise agreement. Under the agreement, the commission will consider during their November 19th meeting the city would provide the full 7 mills in the current budget year, which was already budgeted. Then for the next 4 fiscal years would provide 3.5 mills. So essentially, after this year, they would cut the amount that they're providing to the library by half.
Right.
The proposed agreement would also allow the library board to appoint the library director and set the director's salary. That seems a little sketchy.
Yeah.
Which is not the current practice. The director would report to the board and be responsible for the management of the library and the execution of the library policies as set by the board. In recent years, it's been a complication of existing arrangement as the library director reports to the library board and the city manager as a department head. Under the proposed agreement, the library director would be the administrative liaison to the city manager's office. The proposed agreement also maintains city services such as human resources, payroll, finance, accounting, and other services under the same internal service charge structure that applies to other city departments and currently exists for the library. The library, like other city departments, pays internal service charges for those services. The library employees will also remain as city employees under the proposed agreement. The proposed agreement would expire June 30th, 2029, and could be extended for a successive 1-year renewal terms only upon mutual written agreement of the parties prior to the expiration of the original term or any renewal term. Either party may request a review of the agreement prior to the end of the original term or any renewal term according to the city. So it seems what's sort of weird here is that they already have that ability to look at this agreement every year or every so often, and it seems like there's members in the community and including the library that have challenged the city on even being able to do that.
Right.
So I would imagine they would continue to challenge them if at some point they do try and remove those 3.5 mils in the future.
And they can do that by just a vote, right?
Yeah. Like it's the city's money. Well, no. It's the taxpayers' money. Right. So,
and didn't they already make a choice?
Yeah, they sent the final. What do they call it? It was their final offer.
Right. And
but apparently, it wasn't quite the final offer.
Right. And that's supposed to be voted on when?
Their November. I think it's their November. Let's see. It says up here.
Mm-hmm. It says up there.
Is scheduled to vote on a new management agreement with the Great Falls Public Library during their November 19th meeting after months of negotiation. So that'll be, Tuesday. It's actually Tuesday. And then the library board will consider the agreement on November 26th.
And I know it seems small, but I don't really think that we should have the library open on Sundays. There's a lot of other cuts that you could be making too. I don't think, and I know it sounds small, but 9 to 5 and Saturdays until 2:00.
Yeah.
But
so the reduction of 3.5 mils, according to the library, will delay the implementation, not even cut these programs. It's not like these programs are already instituted.
Right.
But it's delaying the implementation of some items, cause job losses. Note, these are government jobs. We shouldn't be in the business of just trying to protect government jobs and cut services and programmings, which could include cuts to youth services staff, reducing early literacy outreach, school age
Oh,
programming, college and life preparedness for teens. Which I thought this was part of the role of GFPS.
right. And me and Anne were reading this the other night, and unfortunately, this is a very complicated issue, but it doesn't have to be. And we sat
Mm-hmm.
for a few hours trying to figure out exactly what was going on with the numbers and how where it was going. And you just said it, and I can't read the screen right now, but where was it that they have the outreach programs? Why? Read those again. Read those bullet points again.
Oh yeah, I guess it's right there. Um, So the reduction of 3.5 mils according to the library will delay the
Right.
implementation of some items, including cuts to youth service staff, reducing early literacy outreach, which yeah, that seems like
That
that's a
seems
GFPS, that's a IDEA law sort of thing.
right. Why are we? I don't. That could be going to
I
so
I
many other
think
services that
I think
actually.
would be an interesting question to GFPS that
Yeah.
are our services not suitable at GFPS that we need to rely on the library to fill that.
Right. And it might be as simple as that they have something where they can come do tours of the library, or
Mm-hmm.
is that considered their outreach, where they're just saying, well, you could bring tours here, and they're connected that way, and they're considering it
Yeah,
the literacy outreach program.
right.
It'd be interesting to find why or how that actually works, because there's other entities that can be fulfilling that in a greater and better probably capacity, I would think.
Right. Well, and it would be, and I think this is one of the issues with our library is that they seem to be just filling in for a lot of programs that the taxpayers haven't agreed to in other capacities, either
Right.
through programs that are done at the federal level, the state level, or our local level, including from our public schools. Ultimately, I've been thinking about this more and more, and to me, this seems like you have two entities, the city of Great Falls, namely like a couple of city commissioners,
Right.
um, and then Great Falls Public Library. They are trying to fight for dollars that they keep saying are theirs, when
Right.
ultimately these are the taxpayers' dollars. When we have just gone through an election season, which we're about to get into,
Right.
the results of when we've just gone through an election season where property taxes were a huge issue, shouldn't the city be taking up the responsibility to try and give some of that money back
You would think
to
so.
the people
You would
instead of
think so.
just blaming the state government?
Well, I mean, it kind of would soften the blow of their taxes going up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you expect when you put in 70% of your um, taxes to go into public schools, and you have a result that you have. Why are we paying into something that called the outreach program? If you're going to be tied into stuff like that, and that money should go back so those people can actually afford what they need to, services and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's where I'm coming to this. I think I'll be trying going to the city commissioner meeting to make that point because I'm tired of them fighting for the baby instead of just giving the baby back to the community.
Right.
Just trying to
Right.
think about the two women with the baby who go to the king to say, "This is my baby." No, this is my baby. At this point, they're going with the option to split the baby in half and then give it to both of them.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's their priority.
I was trying to look. I thought I saw online where there was actually they have job openings for the library.
Oh yeah.
I was trying to find that while we were talking, but this one is down. City of Great Falls job openings. No jobs found. But I think there was like three.
I think there were a couple, and when you're looking at some of the salaries for some of these folks, because I think they were hiring a like an assistant director of the library. They seem to have a pretty healthy
Hmm.
paycheck considering the rest of the population here in Great Falls, which I mean, again, yeah, when you have more government jobs and you're giving them these sorts of salaries, you
Yeah.
are making more people dependent on them. You are stifling the economy because they likely could have been productive elsewhere, but they weren't. But they aren't. They're likely more just taking money from taxpayers.
Yeah, I agree. And like I
So,
said, it doesn't have to be so complicated. I wish you look at how all of those, and then you get this inner fighting. We
yeah,
saw a couple of posts online about this, and they can. It's under contentious here. People are a little bit upset about some voted for this, and because it's so hard to understand what these levies actually are. And I think maybe sometime we'll dive into a little bit deeper on learning
yeah.
how they're distributed too.
So I thought that was an interesting article, very, very timely. But let's move to our conversation at hand, which is election results. I pulled it up for Cascade County specifically because we are trying to speak a little more locally, and I think it'll be interesting as we're going through these how we think they might be different than the statewide votes or the national votes. But either way,
All right, who are we going to go
um,
to first?
what?
Who are we going to first?
I think we start at the top, but let's just take a look at here at some of the results. So all the precincts are now reporting in. So maybe it wasn't as untimely as I thought because we did have to wait for, especially here in Cascade County, there were some issues with
Yes.
counting these ballots. But out of Cascade County, we have almost 52,000 registered voters.
Mm-hmm.
About 38,000 had cast their vote. One thing I just want to clarify, out of the registered voters, this counts as 73% of the population, which, I mean, it's reasonable. But when you consider the population of Cascade County, which,
Right.
do I have that up here? Probably not. I'll just pull it up again. We're about 85,000 people here in Cascade County,
Yeah.
considering 38,000, less than half of the citizens or residents of Cascade County participated in this vote. And so the reason I point that out is because I want to make very clear to our elected officials they have no mandate from us.
No.
You have less than 50% of our population. We There is no consent of the governed here. Do not try and make an argument that you have a mandate just because you won this election.
Exactly.
Just my simple
What a
point there.
great point. What a great. You just think of that off your top of your head.
No, man, I always think about that.
But
There
yeah,
is
it's
no
true.
consent of the governed here in America.
Yeah, but
Okay, we know
look at
who
those
won the
numbers.
president, especially
Yeah.
from Montana. It's true here in Cascade County. Donald Trump
Were you
did
shocked?
did his work. United States Senator Tim Sheehy ended up winning. Here are results from Cascade County. I was hoping for a little more showing for our Libertarian candidate, Sid Dowd, who is
Yeah.
from Great Falls. He was born and raised here in Great Falls. His wife is also born and raised here in Great Falls. But
Hmm.
it was just a tough season with all of the campaign ads going with both Tim Sheehy and John Tester. But ultimately, Sheehy did end out winning that. Were you surprised by that at all, Kevin?
No.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I mean, I think I bit my nails a little bit, because he's so, Tester's so entrenched.
Yeah.
Um, to unseat him was, but I wasn't shocked. No.
Yeah. I think I'm in agreement there. It's usually the incumbent does have some sort of advantage, but just given the history,
Yeah.
um, it wasn't so much of an advantage. I'm just a little upset because now we have two Republican senators. I've always
Yeah.
appreciated having. I mean, we're libertarians. We don't really favor one party over another. I've always enjoyed having both a
Yep.
Democrat and a Republican senator, just because regardless of who's in power, you have one member in your Senate who's there representing Montana.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So for United States representative for a second congressional district, so I think this was the first year, or maybe it was the prior year. But this was the second election. Now that I'm remembering that we have two representatives in the House of Representatives in the U.S. Congress. So this is for the Eastern District, which Great Falls or Cascade County is in, and it was up Troy Downing versus John Driscoll. I didn't
Hmm.
care about either of these guys. I think we had some other
Me either.
guys in mind in the primary sessions, but Troy Downing ended up winning that. Not too surprising there. I think that was sort of the shoe-in, whoever the Republican winner of that primary was.
Yeah, we're
Do you have any other thoughts there, Kevin?
no, not on that
Yeah,
one. I think we both have the same agreements.
yeah. Governor and Lieutenant Governor, we had Greg Gianforte winning this. With a good showing here, 62%. Ryan Bussey, 35%, and then Kaiser Lieb, our libertarian buddy, with 2%, which I was proud of that 2% because he
Yeah,
didn't do that much campaigning, but he was vocal on Twitter, and he did try, and he's a comedian by
by
trade or
trade.
by his current career, so I think he's just traveled around.
Yeah,
One thing to note, and this is for anyone interested in ballot access laws here in Montana, ballot access laws are based off of the total number of votes that the winning governor candidate got in the last election. So in this
hmm,
case, it's based off of this 23, well, not here in Cascade County, but whatever the statewide number is. Our libertarian candidates had to obtain at least 5% of that number.
right.
And so, one thing as libertarians we should probably focus on is making sure that there's a tight race between Republican and Democratic candidates in the future to ensure it's a little easier for us to get ballot access because this year was close. It was a
Yeah,
close year.
it was very close. Yeah,
Secretary of State, another not surprising one. Christy Jacobson, 63%. Jesse Mullen, who we've chatted with a few
yeah,
times, he got 34, and then our Libertarian friend John Lamb, an even stronger showing than the other two, got 3% of the vote. I think this is probably because he's starting to get his name known a little more and more across
yeah.
the state with
I
some
think
of the
so too.
things he's doing too.
Yeah, God, I love that guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's awesome. But it wasn't a surprise again.
No.
Um, as we were strategizing and just talking before the election, I think we're right on target.
Yep. Attorney General, again, not a surprise, and you
No,
kind of see this. And again, this is Cascade County results. I think this gives you a little bit more telling about the makeup of Cascade County,
yeah,
because it's pretty consistent, about 60 to 63%
look at that.
for the Republican, and then the rest or some sort of fraction from that, for the Democrat. Austin Knutson, not too much of a fan of him. John Lamb is definitely not a fan of him
No,
because he was part of prosecuting the Jesse
yeah,
Boyd and all of those other missionaries
yeah.
who were coming through
And
Montana.
they were
So
finally acquitted, and
yeah,
of all charges, and rightly so. And you're right. I was on the fence with voting for him because of that, and I'm not saying I did or I didn't, but it really stung me about
yeah,
what was going on there. So
mm-hmm.
that could have cost them if they would have covered it the way they should have covered it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. If our media here in Montana, and not just our local media here in Great Falls, but just Montana more broadly, if they covered the stories that are truly about civil rights or individual rights in the state abusing it, then
Yep.
I'm sure we would see different election
And
results
there's a why
altogether.
too, all you guys out there for Second Amendment rights and
Mm-hmm.
our laws here that are
Yeah.
supposed to be really awesome to protect the individual property or otherwise. That was a big case that they should have gotten their nails into a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. For
Yeah.
sure. State auditor. I don't think there's too much to discuss here. James Brown winning similar margins as previously. Uh, Maybe we could chat a little bit about the state superintendent of public instructions. Do you know any, since you're an education guy, do you know anything about Susie Hedelin who ended up winning this? I mean, this was actually a
Actually,
little bit less of a showing than some of the other Republicans, but what are your thoughts?
I actually like her.
Hmm.
When before I dropped out for the state superintendent race, I had a chance to meet both of them, and we talked extensively in so many areas, and it was nice to have the conversation. So I think she was after me after announcing I was at the one of the Republican meetings in Helena and announcing candidacies for state superintendent. And I was there, and I announced mine. And I think she was after mine, and we talked a little bit after. Very nice lady, very nice. She's got a uphill battle to take over. She's got some some problems with the budget and some money missing that are going to be coming in. She's got some programs that are going to be put under her, like the the um, the voucher system is going to be under her jurisdiction in her department. So it'll be interesting to see how they get that pilot out running, if it's going to make its way out to where it's supposed to be going. So I have some, and I think people I've talked to too have liked her too. There's others that have made me like her even more as I kind of talked with her. But we have to remember this position here doesn't have a lot of power. Um, Although they like to say that, oh, the superintendent of public instruction, and blame a lot of stuff on them, they really don't have a lot to say with the districts. The districts have all of the power, while the state superintendent really doesn't. You'd think they'd be looking over all of those people, but they don't. So the leadership
It's
this
kind
year is a
of
little different.
they have like lateral authority because you
Right,
have the state constitution, which then vests the power in the legislature. But
right,
from the state constitution, that's actually where you have the school boards and your school districts enshrined.
right,
So their authority is not derived from the state superintendent.
right,
It's derived from the Montana Constitution, and I
right.
think that speaks to that power dynamic that you're speaking
Yeah,
about.
people get that mixed up because they think that you go in there. Does she have legislative sway when they're up there? Yeah, I mean, they should be working with the legislators. They should be making those policies with them as they move through. If you don't have somebody who can work with the Republicans or Democrats that are up there, then you have a problem. So
She's more, I guess, the role of the state superintendent is more about implementing things at the state level that the legislature passes, and I think it's become more of a um, it was more of a afterthought, perhaps, of a role that was
hmm
established, or maybe more of an ad hoc role once that constitution was signed. That hey, we do need someone at a state level to institute some different things that the legislature applies at a state level, as opposed to
yeah.
handing down to the school districts.
And what else is unique in this too is that Montana is one of the very few states that elect their state superintendents of public
Mm.
instruction. A lot of across the country do not; they are appointed.
Were
After
they appointed by the governor?
I do believe so. Yes,
Mm.
they're part of maybe the cabinet and how they work that down. But Montana is just one of just a few that elect
Yeah,
theirs. hmm
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Public Service Commission, which I thought there'd probably be the other public, and maybe that's somewhere else, but they're involved in a lot of the public utilities. I'm not sure what all that includes. Energy, gas,
Right.
water, many of that. I think that all kind of gets laid up into here. I think this is pretty interesting on how, like everything else is 62 to 63. This is
Yeah.
overwhelmingly for
Yeah.
Jeff Wellborn. I really don't know much about either of these two guys,
Me
but you
either.
can tell by uh, the vote participation. Less people participated in this than some of our other races in
Yeah.
Cascade County. Which this might be, and it might come down later on, is that there's that other, because I think Cascade County is probably split into one or two different public service districts.
That is interesting.
Clerk of the Supreme Court. So this is an interesting one because, as Roger Roots will tell us, they really don't have much power. Their whole job is just to file paperwork.
Yeah, that's how they do.
So when
Yeah.
when we were talking to Roger, he was giving us his pitch, and it really wasn't a pitch because many
No.
libertarians were going to vote for him because they know Roger. He's
Right.
got some good history here in Montana. He's representing the Tiger King, if you didn't know that. Um, but
I did not.
yeah, he told us that his campaign promise was he will file paperwork correctly and on time.
Yes. That's and I mean
That's what you can ask.
that's what you want. Yes. And that's good.
Yep.
He got 4%.
Yep.
And thank
Yeah,
you.
and I think this 4% is true at the state level. It's actually Roger who ensured us to get ballot access for following years. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it wasn't for Roger, we might have been okay because I think there might be a grace period. But either way, Roger definitely showed up for the party by just
Yeah.
his name recognition and knowing some different folks.
Yeah, I was going to run for public instruction, like I said, and I had to for ethical reasons. I and other reasons I had to remove myself from that position. I thought it would get too hairy,
Yeah.
and sticky for some things. So
Supreme Court, I think these are some interesting results because you had Jeremiah Lynch and Catherine Bittigary sort of, I mean, not necessarily them running together, but a lot of the advertisements or endorsements were for Jeremiah Lynch and Catherine Bittigary together, and then the
right,
other set were for the Sons, Corey Swanson and Daniel Wilson.
right, right.
For Supreme Court Chief Justice, Corey Swanson ended up winning out on this one. But then when we look at the Supreme Court Justice number 3, Catherine Bittigary ended up winning out on this one. And it was really just like the vote flips. So 45-54, then
Yep,
54-45.
yep,
Which I think is interesting because a lot, or at least how the advertisements that you saw around town were painting Bittigary and Lynch was that they're part of the progressive agenda,
mm-hmm.
and then Swanson and Wilson are part of the conservative agenda. So despite that, this this seems to be a lot more even, and not too much dictated
Yeah.
by party lines or
It
ideological
feels
reasons.
it feels that way.
Yeah.
It feels that way. And like, I don't know much about these two, but a lot of these things that do come down, like you said, were very contentious. As some of like Roe versus Wade was put away, and
Yep.
they people were really kind of focusing on that. So, in terms, what did you hear? Which ones were better on some of the issues that we're facing? And did you know?
Honestly, I think it'd be hard to tell because most of what I heard was through some sort of advertisements or just things just
Right.
being blasted out there, and especially with judges, it's hard to say because for one, a good judge will never tell you how they will rule on a hypothetical situation,
Right.
and that's good because
That it's real good.
it has to be a case by case basis, like
Should be.
what are the circumstances. Um, I think for Catherine Bittigary has, as we're considering this cascade effect and trying to do some things with that, her name popped up as being a potential judge who would help us keep
Yeah.
Cascade County accountable. And so that was the main thing that sort of drew me to her and that I heard from her. All these other guys, it was really based off of, or my impressions of them were based off of what was said in the media. Even when you go to their campaign websites, I mean, you could just copy one person's face and
It's
name on the
very
other
general.
person's
Yep.
website, and it's the same. They're all
Yep.
protecting the Montana Constitution.
Of course they are.
Hmm. Okay, so this one's interesting. So these are for our district judges. They're voted to be retained, as opposed to having anyone run against them. So we had three of them up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is all three or if we have a fourth district judge, but Judge David Grubich, Judge Elizabeth Best, and Judge John Kutzman. I think as I look at these, John Kutzman and David Grubich, they're pretty similar in terms of uh, their results. So 82 and 85 versus
Mm-hmm.
15 and 18. Elizabeth Best was a little bit. I mean, obviously she still won her reelection or retaining election, but still, this came down to um, one in every four persons voted against her, whereas this is a little more than
Yeah, that
I don't
actually
know.
speaks loudly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at something like this, and we've all here lived in Great Falls, understand um, Judge Bess and some of the press that she has received. And I was very surprised that it wasn't kind of higher. Actually, I was kind of disappointed it wasn't higher. But that's a pretty good poke right there, and saying,
Hmm.
hey, we're not very liked on that one.
Yeah, and I hope they realize that. And again, none of this stuff here is their consent of them or a mandate that they're doing a good job. Because remember,
Absolutely
less than 50% of the population ended up voting.
right. That's a shame.
And especially with these retention elections, and I
I
think
know.
something related to here as well, a lot of what we know for elections, especially if it's really close, just comes down to a lot of folks voting one way or another based off of whose name they've heard more. Like
Right.
they might not be as well, or they might not have read into these candidates or these issues as much as they've needed to make their decision. And sometimes it just comes to who is the incumbent or whose name have I heard more. And so when you get some of these retention elections, if you don't have anyone running against them
Yeah.
and you don't have a reason to vote against them, you're either not going to vote or you're just going to vote for them.
And you have a turnover of candidates too. I mean, not.
Mm-hmm.
Once people one person runs, I don't think it's very much that they go back and run again,
Right.
and again in such of a situation like this. They might just move on and move out
Yeah.
of Great Falls. So we don't have a lot of opportunities for judges and their lifestyles that would fit this area. So
Mm-hmm.
um, that's another issue that we have.
Yeah. Okay, now it looks like we will be getting into our state legislature makeup and what we got from that. John Cashmere, he won his Republican primary and then he was running unopposed. So he got all. I mean, it's interesting to see how many people ended up voting, but this is also just a portion of Cascade County and not the full part of Cascade County.
Right.
So he ended up winning, of course. State Senator District 39. I think this is probably on the other side of Cascade County from Kashmir.
Mm-hmm.
Republican ended up winning this 3-1 vote. So Wiley Gault versus Bruce Schultz. I think what we know from our state Senate makeup in Montana legislature is that it is still a supermajority of Republicans there.
Right.
Within our House districts in Cascade County, this one was rather disappointing to see. We were, and the CCLP actually had endorsed Hannah Trebus
Mm-hmm.
for not just her primary campaign, but also for the general election.
Right.
She ended up losing to Jane Weber 45-55, but this was an incredibly tough district. Kevin,
Yeah.
you live in this district. Why is this district hard?
I really don't know. I don't think a lot of the people get out to vote.
Mm.
They don't really participate in something like that, even though that I think there was four. What's it say? How many? What's the total there?
So this is 3,289, and what we know from each of the legislative districts is that
Mm-hmm.
it's about 10,000
Yeah.
people in each district.
Yeah, about that. So the numbers don't reflect, what the potential of
Mm-hmm.
what is here, and you know, Hannah came pretty close there, and I mean, what she lose by 300, 200? What is that?
Yeah, about 300, a
Yeah,
little
about
shy of
well,
300, a
and I
little
mean
more.
that's a good showing. Jane has
Yep.
a name, and we knew it was going to be hard for Hannah to kind of move up through those ranks again.
Mm-hmm.
It was a name recognition again. So,
Yep.
but people need to vote.
Yeah. District 20, this was with Melissa Nikolakakos,
Mm-hmm.
who is the wife of George Nikolakakos. So George was running for a re-election. Was Melissa's first electoral run,
Mm-hmm.
and she was running against Rena Fontana Moore, who was the who was she? She was the election administration, but she had the whatever role that was actually tied under. But when she lost that election last time around, I guess she decided to run for Democrat here. Uh, I mean, just thinking this 3,289 for the Hannah Trebus James Weber
Mm-hmm.
district
Yeah.
versus the Nikolakakis Moore, almost 5,000. Again, that speaks to that voter activation that you have
Yeah.
in each of those districts. But Melissa, the Republican, did come out on top here. Ed Buttrey, who was an incumbent, and Leela Graham. This was actually a rematch from the 2022 election.
Right.
A little more
Yep.
voters here, 5,404, which a very strong showing for Ed Buttrey. And then the state representative District 22. This is George Nikolakakis,
Yep.
running sort of incumbent. One of the weird things is they're not quite incumbents because they were new district lines, but they were the last
Exactly.
ones in the legislature. And he ran. Ron Pollock ran against him. This was a little bit similar in terms of showing as the Hannah Trebus one,
Yeah.
but 61% to 37%. And then we get into your district, Kevin, District
Yeah.
23, where you had a pretty good showing, 3%.
Yep.
But this was with Eric Tillman in there as a Republican and Sandor Hopkins as a Democrat. This is a younger guy. I think he's probably about my age. Sandor
He
is.
is.
But Eric ended up winning this with 56%. District 24. This was a race that we were originally going to have some libertarian run in. Steve Fitzpatrick was ran unopposed, and he had a quite good number of showings for
He
for
did.
running
Yeah,
unopposed in there as
unopposed. Yeah.
well. Um, and then this is outside of Great Falls, more just in the rural parts of Cascade County. Steve Gist won re-election 3-1 against James Rickley. Russ Minor also ran unopposed in District 26 with
Yep.
97%. And then District 78, another about 3-1 showing, but pretty small voter turnout with Randon
Yeah.
Gregg versus Glenn Lambert. So, I mean, a little bit mixed results for all these districts here in Cascade County, with only one going to Democrat,
Yeah.
but the rest, I mean, pretty crazy in terms of the differences where you have 45, a 53, and then you get up to these 60s, and then even the 75s for some of these more rural areas. Anything surprising about all of these, or thoughts
No,
you might have taken together with our turnout for state representation here in Cascade County?
no, I just think the Republicans have the momentum and walking out of COVID, and then now here we are, and this is the result of that. And I think that's
Yeah.
still in people's fresh in people's minds, and they won't be told what to do. And they think that the
Mhm.
Republicans can get that done. My worry is that I, as a libertarian, why do I have to rely on the Republicans to do the right thing? Why do I have to put all of my faith in one basket? And I have to, which I didn't. I'm not saying I voted for or against any of that are up there. But the what is representation?
They are your
I guess
representatives now, right?
right. And when you look at the vote numbers in each one, like you said, 10,000 in each and which one, do we really have a representation if people aren't voting and showing us
Hmm.
really where they are? I don't know how to change that. I don't know how to get them out to vote. I don't know why they don't fill out their mail-in ballots and just have them done. Why the society doesn't feel the need to make that flip. I don't know, but
Yeah.
remember, you now are all run by one specific government, one in particular. So
Yeah.
um, that's a uphill battle for them to be able to accomplish.
Let's just keep going. So we got two more races, and then we have some constitutional initiatives we'll look at. First one was clerk of district court. Tina Henry was an incumbent. She ended up winning re-election unopposed. So there's
Nothing,
that.
nothing to see
This
there.
is probably
I
one
mean,
of the more interesting ones. Was our county commissioner race where we had Eric Heinbaugh, who was running versus Don Ryan as the Democrat.
right,
What was interesting is that earlier this year was the Republican primary where Eric Heinbaugh was running against um, uh, uh, Ray Grolkowski, who is the incumbent or sitting commissioner, and
right,
she originally had beat Don Ryan in that previous county commissioner race. So there was a campaign, which it's not shown here, but there was a campaign for Ray, a write-in campaign, to put her name in because a lot of folks felt a little disenfranchised from Eric's run,
right. Yep.
especially because we already had an incumbent in there. And I'm actually kind of curious because if as you like look at these numbers, you have 57 plus 38. That's what, like nine. I guess that's 95. So about
Hmm.
5% of the votes are unaccounted for here.
Yeah.
I'm guessing most of those votes end up being for Ray. So potentially she did
They
better than
shouldn't
many
have
of our
to.
libertarians as a write-in.
They should have to put the write-ins in
Yeah.
because there is 5% that's out there
There's
that
5%
was.
missing, and who
Hmm.
knows where that 5% were. I mean, I don't think she got all of those write-ins, but
No,
I
no.
bet she got a large share of that 5%.
Hmm.
And like I said, it's probably on par, if not slightly better than some of our libertarian
Yeah.
candidates.
Yep. And they should have to show those.
Yeah. Okay, constitutional initiative. So we had CI 126, CI 127, and CI 128. 26 and 127, these were sort of paired together, at least when it came to a lot of um,
Right.
position statements or who you saw funding them. They both changed the how our elections are ran. So CI 126 would do a top four primary. So during
Hmm.
the primary session, there is no Republican ballot, Libertarian ballot, or Democrat ballot,
Democrat battle.
which I've always had issues with that because when I look at the primaries, I want to participate in different parts of the primaries. So, like county commissioner, I may want to participate in the Republican primary, but participate in the Democrat primary for my district, my um, legislature district.
Like,
So
and if it
currently,
just
you
be
have to.
Sam's district and Sally's district
Right,
that you want to
exactly.
be into.
And currently, we have to uh, you have to pick one to participate in that
Right.
primary. So the idea
Right.
of this one, which there are pros and cons to it, that was probably the best pro that I could see. That it sort of eliminates what party you have to participate in, but at the end of the day, it also limits some access for some other parties as
Yes.
well potentially.
But that was
Um,
close. I
yeah,
mean,
it was.
I was in the
Hmm.
same boat as you and rowing the same way because I don't like constitutional amendments
Yeah,
in such this manner when I don't trust the voting force behind that for 49% of the state votes or whichever. We're not That's not true representation. And to
yeah,
have something that would be putting a constitutional thing, and I'll say that for all the rest of these.
yeah. Well, and that's so true as well. So this one was close. This one I'm actually surprised that this one wasn't close. So CI 127, this would have required a majority to
Right.
to actually win elections. So right now it's you just need the if you have the most votes, you end up winning for a variety of different offices. And I'm sort of surprised that it didn't win or get more support by folks. But I think part of that was because this was being painted at, and partly because this was being pushed by the ranked choice voting
Right.
groups and organizations. So everyone viewed this as a ranked choice constitutional initiative, when in reality it would require that you have to win by 50%, but it gave it up to the legislature to decide how
Decide.
that's actually done. So it could have been a ranked choice
Mm-hmm.
method. It could have been a runoff election, which that ends up becoming costly. There's some other things that have been entertained, like a voter
Yeah.
approval, I'm not sure if that's the right language of it, but there were a couple of different ideas floating. But I think the main issue was that it left it up to the legislature instead of just defining what it was going to do
Right.
to be able to set that 50% or more. And then this last one, CI 128. So this was about essentially instilling abortion as a Montana constitutionally protected right. And this one ended up getting um, pretty large support statewide. And I will say all of these results are consistent with maybe not the exact percentage split, but the results in terms of what side won was
Yeah.
consistent with what we saw at the state level. So both 126 and 127 failed, but 128 did pass at the state level. And I think what's interesting is across the state, and it's true here in Cascade County, we had a lot of Republicans who were elected. Republicans won in Montana.
Yes.
Despite that, though, you have this constitutional amendment that enshrined abortion as a constitutionally protected right in our Montana Constitution. So that goes to show, and hopefully a lot of the Republican legislatures who might be a little more socially conservative realize that even the people that voted for them are not giving them a mandate for their ideologies,
Right.
because there are many people who voted for them who also voted to enshrine abortion as a constitutionally protected right.
I think it's a mistake.
Yeah,
I
I'm
really
with you.
do. And
It's sort of crazy that well, I mean ultimately I think it's just defining healthcare professionals' role, or it puts the legislature
right.
in a stronger position to say these are
Yes.
healthcare professionals and these are not. And I think this is going to
Yeah.
be true regardless of what sort of side you're on. If you have a Republican controlled legislature or a Democrat controlled legislature,
Yep.
They have a lot of leeway to define who that actually is. And even when you look at the interpretation of this in our court systems, again, you have a lot of leeway for both a liberal court and a conservative court to define what this language actually means and
Yeah.
entails. So I know it was intended to mimic language that was similar to what Roe v. Wade instituted,
Mm.
but at the end of the day, Roe v. Wade wasn't. I mean, and we know you and I have chatted about a lot of the issues with Roe v. Wade, but I don't think many of the public understand some of the nuances with Roe v. Wade, why it was actually decided, or even just some of the implications of having Roe v. Wade around, especially with this idea of viability, because
There's
viability can always change.
there's complicated gremlins in this that I think are going to rear its head that are on that you know, unforeseen consequences that are headed for this amendment here. Do I
Yeah,
think it gets insured? Do I think it holds constitutional muster? That's left up to interpretation and how
yeah.
if anything gets brought up to the Supreme Court. I don't know. State court first. I think it'll pass muster with them, um,
Hmm.
and they'll find the language to be able to put it in.
I do think it's interesting that there's still like why is 726 versus 727?
Oh, I don't know. Hmm.
That's strange.
Yeah.
So these are the election results specifically of Cascade County. They're pretty similar to what we saw at
Yep.
the state level. Any any final thoughts related to our elections here in Montana or even at that national level? Because we know we got Trump elected and we've already been seeing some interesting things coming out from him. What are your thoughts, Kevin? Any closing thoughts?
I mean, well, I think it's noted for myself. I didn't vote for Trump. I went in a different direction. Do I didn't vote for him because this is a 4-year term and they're relying a lot of stuff on the shoulders of one man for a 4 year. The inconsistencies that are in our country, we can't have those anymore. We need to have consistencies and fluency in our country, and it just adds a little bit more on my end. I just don't. I don't. And there was a few things that Mr. Trump said prior in his other election that turned me the other way. But I think he's learned a lot. I think as they try to keep this war machine going, there'll be some types of persuasion for this man, and I think he will be a little bit influenced by those decisions. And I think we're going to stay in some wars that we shouldn't be involved in. And I don't think 4 years of a term would be able to help with stopping something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in my eyes, that's how I feel about that. Um, we only have those other representatives. I mean, she brand new. He's just going to get his butt whooped when he's in
Yeah.
right now.
Daddy Danes will be telling. Well, I guess he's not the. But either way, Daddy
no,
Danes will be telling him how to vote.
I would think so. I don't know what to expect from. Like I said, I have a problem putting my whole faith in the reliance of the Republican Party as the one-party system. I don't.
We don't want to tell people that we told you so because we'd
Right.
like to be a little hopeful, but we're
Exactly.
pretty sure we'll have to be telling people we told you so.
And that was the whole, one of the good reasons why we started this, so then we can have it on record, and either we're going to eat crow and take it, or we're going to be able to say I told you so. And I think we're in the more told you so. But
Yeah, put it on record where
yeah,
it's November 17th, 2024.
yeah.
In another, probably not even like a year, we'll be able to say, huh, told you so, guys.
Oh, we'll see
Hope we're
what
wrong. We hope we're
happens.
wrong.
We'll see what happens. I don't think it's over. They're too quiet. Way too
Yeah,
quiet. Um,
things are
a little eerie.
things are cooking.
Yeah, they're cooking. That frog's gonna jump out of that pot. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's for
January
sure.
something, January 6th or 7th, whatever. We have to make it to there yet. I
Yeah.
mean, with Biden, I mean, what he just signed an executive order to go ahead and shoot more missiles deeper into Russia. I mean, it's propaganda after propaganda. It's pushing
Anything
and
to keep
pushing.
the war machine running.
Yeah. So, well, let's just hope. I'm not gonna say. Well, I'm not gonna put my life in their hands.
Yeah.
I'll do my own thing.
Well, this was our take, Kevin and
Hmm.
Tony's take on, well, the Undercurrent's take at our election results here in Montana and Cascade County, and I guess also nationally as well. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and you'll see this episode, and then hopefully you'll watch our next episode, which is talking a little bit about cryptocurrency and what that might mean for Great Falls, Montana.
Yeah. Make sure you share, subscribe, hit that like button. Make sure that you boost those numbers for us. We appreciate it, and we will catch you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Bye.